Today is June the 28th, 2024, and we're here with Gina Parker, who's running for the Criminal Court of Appeals, Place 7. And she came up here from Waco to have an event and stopped by to say hello and wants to visit with the voters and tell you all what's going on. Gina, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's good to be back in Amarillo today. And I'm just really grateful for all the support I had here from you, Dan. You've been a real advocate for me during the primary, and also had a lot of support from the grassroots here in Amarillo. And I appreciate the nomination, and I'm proud to be the Republican nominee for Place 7.
So you're now the Republican nominee. You beat your opponent, who was the incumbent, which is very hard to do.
Near impossible.
So what you did was unprecedented, really.
It was, and there were three of us that ran against three sitting incumbents. David Shank, who is the Republican nominee for Place 1, and myself for Place 7, and then Lee Finley, who is now the Republican nominee for Place 8. So we ran against three incumbents, and we did it with the support of Attorney General Ken Paxton. And he really stood strong because this court had decided the Stevens decision, which stripped him of his power to unilaterally prosecute election fraud. So, for example, in cities like Travis County, where you have Soros-backed DAs, they're not likely to invite Attorney General Ken Paxton to come and prosecute election fraud. So, he was very upset over the decision, and so he got out there and campaigned against the incumbents and endorsed us. And Sid Miller was also our ag commissioner here in Texas, was just a strong advocate for all three of us. But what was interesting, Dan, and I talked a little bit about this in our meeting, is the grassroots were engaged. It wasn't just our statewide elected officials, but the really solid conservative base of our party got involved, and that's why you have, really, it's historical. We swept the court with three incumbents were taken out, and you have three Republican nominees. That's just truly unprecedented.
Three real Republican nominees
Yes.
that actually believe and adhere to the party platform.
Yes, true.
Yeah, well, that's what's important. I think we need to do more of that statewide.
I think we had a really successful year when you look at some of the state rep races in terms of the grassroots base of the party. One of the things that really concerns me, I've been involved for a long time, like you have, is we elect people and they promise us that they're going to do certain things, especially our representatives in terms of state reps, senators, and of course at the federal level. So they get elected and they forget about the people that they promised that they would uphold their values, and they betray the trust of the people. And unfortunately, like you said, it's very hard to unseat these incumbents. It takes a real effort and a strong voice like we had in the leadership here in Texas.
And fair and transparent elections.
Yes, fair elections are very important, and so I think, we want every vote to count, and we don't want to allow dead people to vote, and we don't want people voting multiple times. So.
Well, we'll just keep working on it till we get it right.
That's right. So you got to stay in the game. Sometimes people go home, they don't win the first time around, and they don't keep on. You got to win. You have to persevere, just like in sports. It's endurance and perseverance and a real passion for what you're doing.
So why don't we tell the people watching a little bit about how the Supreme Court and the Criminal Court of Appeals work, and why
Sure.
and why is one called judges and the other called justices?
To confuse us all. That's what my opinion is. So we have two Supreme Courts in Texas. We have a civil Supreme Court, and then basically we have a criminal court that is like a criminal Supreme Court. So we have the Texas Supreme Court, which is the highest court for all civil matters and juvenile law matters. And that court hears all the cases. It's a court of final resort for Texas. And then we have the sister court, is what I like to call it. We have the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the highest criminal court and the court of last resort for criminal cases. So we have basically a bifurcated system. So you have this high Texas Supreme Court, the equivalent Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, one hearing civil appeals as a court of last resort, one hearing criminal appeals as a court of last resort. So interestingly enough, they call the judges on the Texas Supreme Court justices, and our court were called judges. So that adds a little bit more confusion. And then the other thing that brings some confusion is we all have place numbers that we run for, but you can vote for all of us statewide during the election.
Yeah, they're separate positions.
Yes, separate positions, but everyone in Texas can vote for all of those positions.
Right. Yeah. So you have 3 people running on the Court of Criminal Appeals.
Correct.
And then what about the Supreme Court? Who's running on that they might want to consider?
There are 3 Republican nominees. They're currently all 3 sitting justices. We have Justice Blacklock and Justice Bland, and then also Justice John Devine, who's an outstanding conservative jurist on the Texas Supreme Court. These 3 justices, they'll face a lot of opposition, I think, this fall because the Democratic National Committee, one of the subcommittees, they're targeting the Texas Supreme Court because of cases involving the abortion issue post-ops. And supposedly the rumor is, or we're hearing, that they're going to pour millions of dollars into those 3 races. So, we need to be aware of this, and we need to be focused still on the judicial races, because whatever happens with the Texas Supreme Court, if you have millions of dollars that's going to be poured into that civil court there, then it's going to turn out the same liberal progressive voters in our race, for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. So you got the 3 judges in the Texas Supreme Court, the 3 of us running for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And so we need to be raising money. All of us need funds in order to effectively campaign in the event that these millions of dollars come through to try to unseat the judges.
So it's basically going to be on who can get their voters out.
Absolutely. That's very true. So it's important. I'm thankful that Ted Cruz is polling ahead, and he's running an effective Get Out the Vote campaign, and that will help all of us down ballot.
Yeah. Well, it's a presidential year, so I think hopefully that will pull a lot of people to the polls.
Right.
I believe most people are conservative, overwhelmingly so. Unfortunately, it doesn't always show up that way in the results.
That's true.
But I think there's reasons for that hopefully we can get to the bottom of. But the people are conservative. Mm-hmm. And the people moving to Texas, I think, primarily are conservative. So we've just got to get them to understand how important it is to vote.
Absolutely. There's so many people that are conservative, so many in the church where you have Christian conservatives. They're not registered to vote, and they're not voting. So I know there's a big emphasis on getting Christian conservatives registered to vote and turning them out to vote in the general election.
Why do you think these Christian conservatives are not voting? Are they told not to vote, or they think, oh, it doesn't matter, God will handle it?
I don't think they're told not to vote. I've never heard that through the years in ministry and in church. But I think that, it's just a matter of being informed, knowing that your vote counts, mm-hmm. and that it's important to vote, and that, when you vote, you're basically voting your values. So when I go vote, what does the Republican Party stand for? Life, family, lower taxes, and certainly we're not for all the inflation that's been created by Joe Biden. So, what is it that you hope for? What are your values, and what is the party platform? We have a strong pro-family, pro-life, pro-business platform on the Republican side. So if people go vote, they need to understand I'm voting these principles and these values when I go to the polls. And so communicating that message to them, and that their vote does count and it does matter, I think is important too, especially nowadays when there's so much question about whether our votes are being calculated or whether the election is being stolen. So it's
Yeah.
even more important that people vote and participate.
Well, it's a civil rights issue, your elections. To me, that the most important right we have is our vote. So it's our duty as citizens to exercise it, to be informed, and to vote. Otherwise, we lose our republic.
It's true.
It's just that simple. So when people quit voting, they've surrendered to the other side.
That's exactly right. I totally agree with you.
So you can't surrender to the other side just because you're too lazy to be informed and to vote. Because
That's
you're
right.
affecting not only your own life, but your neighbors.
Yep, your children
me,
and your
it's just-
grandchildren.
To me, it's immoral then to not vote. Right.
Well, I mean, you're impacting, anyone who has children or grandchildren. What legacy are you going to leave? If you're not voting, it's like disinheriting your country from your children, because your values are not going to be passed on if you're not voting.
I just don't think this is taught in schools,
No.
and it should be in every high school, in junior high at least, and if not in as a senior, not in junior high, but as a junior or senior, they should be given courses on all things voting and how important it is, and all the things in history that have been decided by one vote.
That's true. I think that's very important. I don't recall that, and I'm older. I do recall having really good, American history and world history, and saying the Pledge of Allegiance at school. That goes a long ways.
Yeah.
Having opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know that schools do that anymore. So we did it in our school growing up until I was in high school. We did that.
Yeah.
That creates a level of patriotism that, we're denying our children of that. I mean, just saying the pledge would create patriotism. That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it makes people think.
It does. It really does. And it gives you, every time I say the pledge, even now as an adult, there's such a sense of pride and, love for my country. And so that's when you do that over and over again as a child, it's instilled into your heart. It's not just words you're saying, it becomes a part of who you are. And our kids are not getting that. Sad.
Well, we'll see if we can't change it.
Yeah, that's what we need to do.
That's what we're trying to do. So inform the voters, educate the voters, because I don't think we ever have to tell or should ever tell anybody how to vote. Just to vote. Because
That's right.
we trust the voter.
That's
Because
true.
if people have the information, they'll make the right decision.
This is true. Even as I've campaigned, a lot of times people in campaigns, they can get really nasty, and, people make mortal enemies, for lack of a better way to put it. And, I ran into one of the SREC committee men, and he said, had a good conversation with him, and he's told me why he was voting for my opponent. And I said, that's great. When I win the primary, I expect you to vote for me in November. You have to, people, it's not how they vote. I respected him because he's engaged in the political process, and that he had given a lot of thought to his decision. And even though it wasn't what I hoped for, as a candidate, I still respected him. And I think that's really important. And also, I think that what we see in our fake news is there's not a real exchange of ideas.
Right.
And in the marketplace of ideas is where you really are able to give deep consideration even to your own values. If you don't listen, then sooner or later you're going to be deceived.
Yeah, that's why I'd rather see two strong parties, two strong, a Democrat Party and a Republican Party, that fight it out over ideas rather than personalities.
Yes.
Right. And each one put forth good candidates that believe. Now, I have a problem with the Democratic Party because they're about statism, and I like the Republican Party because it espouses to be for individualism and families over government. So that's the two basic arguments. But none of this stuff and these philosophical arguments don't ever come out in public anymore.
They don't.
But they used to. But I think part of the problem is the Democrat Party has been so taken over by the extreme left that most of the people that were members of the party have either given up voting or they become Republicans.
True.
But they haven't necessarily changed their philosophical ideas.
Perhaps.
So you water down the dominant party. So over time, everything changes back and forth.
That's
so
true.
one party gets too strong, and then it becomes corrupt, and then it disintegrates.
It's true.
That's what's happened to the Democratic Party. It's basically disintegrated, but it will happen to the Republican Party in time.
It's true. Power corrupts, and definitely absolute power corrupts. And so, you get special interests that start controlling the party, and then eventually people are disenchanted, and you have a decline in the party itself.
Yeah. We don't want that to happen in Texas.
No, we don't. So I will say I am proud of our elected officials. I think, Sid Miller has been very engaged, and I like politicians where it's not about them winning the next race.
Right.
It's about, making good policy decisions and providing leadership for the state. And so those are the things I like about both Attorney General Ken Paxton, Dan Patrick, Sid Miller, all of these, statewide officials who've really engaged in the process and provided strong leadership.
Right. They do what's right.
That's correct. Yeah. And those guys don't always agree, and that's okay. So they, it's the fact that they're involved in the process and they're not out self-protecting and trying to, put their finger in the wind and see what's popular politically and making a decision. Oh, I'm going to do this because it's going to get me votes or gain me favor with the party. And so I think that's when you make really bad policy decisions, and then we don't always have the right people in office.
Well, I can't agree with you more. So you've put on a presentation down in Lubbock with a PowerPoint, and let's tell me a bit more about what that's about.
Okay.
About how the judicial system kind of works.
Sure. So the first part of the PowerPoint we've discussed, which was about how the Texas court system works. And then the second part is about the role of judges. So judges, I would say, are, from a law standpoint, our primary obligation is to uphold the Constitution and the laws of both state and of the United States, and to not legislate from the bench. And so herein lies the problem. So, legislating from the bench, the United States Supreme Court is going to influence legal thinking and philosophy. And so a good example of this that I use in the PowerPoint is in 1957 in the Roth case, the United States Supreme Court made a decision that obscenity was not a free speech right. So in other words, the First Amendment did not provide free speech protection to obscenity, which is interesting. And then, then we have the Warren Court. And this court there were a lot of liberal judges. And one of the justices said, well, the substantive due process clause, or actually the due process clause of the Constitution, it's a wild card for the judges to use as they choose. Wow, what arrogance. So, considering that we have these great founding documents that provide us guidance. And that's exactly what the Warren Court did. And this is people say, well, what does it mean to legislate from the bench? What does that mean? Well, this is a great example. So in 57, you have a clear-cut case from the United States Supreme Court. Obscenity is not protected. And then starting in the 60s and through the early 70s, the Warren Court, with all these liberal justices, they began to overturn, all the obscenity laws, basically turn the obscenity laws upside down on their head. And in a series of 34 decisions, they basically turned everything upside down, the state of the law. And what is interesting is they were very, is how they approached it. So none of the judges, in the majority of those cases, the judges did not sign off on these decisions. So they were anonymous decisions, so to speak. So you have these decisions, and then on top of that, most of these decisions regarding obscenity, they were only 1 or 2 sentences long. Why? Because are they going to write about, what this pornographer was doing and what was in the, what the particulars of that pornographic tape was or pornographic magazine might be? No, because, the media is going to pick up on this and people are going to pay more attention to this. And so that's how we got to where we are today. So basically the Warren Court became a legislative branch that changed the trajectory of how we apply the First Amendment to obscenity cases. And that's legislating from the bench.
So they didn't have to write majority or minority opinions?
No, they wrote, I guess what you would call, I don't know what the right word is, but just, so I don't even know that there were dissents in most of these cases. So it would have been a majority decision that no one signed off on. So you can have opinions
So
where...
you don't even know who...
Yeah, that happens in Texas too. So you can have an opinion where it's all the judges are in agreement and no particular judge signs off on the opinion. So which is really interesting. So it's really fascinating when you look at that one example. So basically what's happened is with the idea, the substantive due process clause, especially at the federal level and even in state cases, that is a broad term. So you're getting outside of the text of the Constitution. You're saying, well, somewhere in here in what the founders wrote, this is substantively found. So, it's really is a wild card, and it does allow the judges a lot of liberty and a lot of freedom to legislate from the bench. In fact, one of the quotes that I really like is from Justice Scalia, and he says, look, day by day, case by case, the court is busy designing a constitution for a country I do not recognize. That's exactly what they've done. So you're remaking the culture of America into the image of the liberal courts and these progressive liberals that have been appointed to the bench. So they can't win at the ballot box because, like you said, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the average family man and mom, they don't want their children or their spouses or their community exposed to obscenity. We all want the same things to a certain extent. And so, and they don't like these, a lot of the legislation, so they're like, oh, well, we're going to make that way we'll take care of this legislation is we're going to call it unconstitutional. And we're going to use the substantive due process clause of the United States Constitution, or we're going to use some other benign provision, and we're going to create all these self-made tests that the court creates. That should be the first clue that you're legislating from the bench when you have to create this long test that is supposed to be applied to whatever legal issue is before the court. When you're writing that kind of a case, it's probably, in majority of the instances, something that the legislature should be doing. And what we forget is that the legislature, they have hearings. People come and testify. The public is very engaged, at least here in Texas. So you have a bill that's being considered. They set that bill for a hearing many times, and then the public comes and testifies. And that way you avoid all these unintended consequences. You hear from both sides, and hopefully at the end of the day, you have a better piece of legislation, and it is the will of the people. The worst part about legislating from the bench is it undermines the voter, and it undermines the will of the people. And that's where it becomes problematic. And it's a real problem, and it's pervasive. So if you have the United States Supreme Court justices and these liberal judges who historically, this is back in the 60s that I'm talking about, and they're legislating from the bench. So it's that mindset of the Constitution being an evolving, living document moves us away from what our founding fathers originally intended. And so that concept works its way through all the law schools, through the books, our constitutional law books, works its way into the legal system and the thought processes of the attorneys involved in law. So think about that. So it becomes a pervasive thought, a pervasive opinion, and then eventually you become, it becomes acceptable. That's an acceptable way of thinking, that the Constitution is an evolving document. Whereas for years it would have been, nobody would have accepted that. The legal bar, scholars would have said, no, it's not, an evolving document. We would need to look at the original intent. We need to look at, the text itself. So you want to look at what the founders meant. And when you look at, I'm amazed when, as I read the Constitution and all the Bill of Rights, at how very clear so much of this is. It's such a well-written document. And yet, we have all these highly intelligent judges who've made it very complicated for lawyers and the general public as well. So it's really it's really sad. What we need to get our judicial system back on track. And part of my platform was, Dan, is let's make justice great again. So, really go back to fundamental principles. That's a lot.
Yeah, people are reading too much of contemporary decisions, and they need to go back and look at the documents that the founders looked at, who wrote the Constitution.
Yes.
People like John Locke and, those are the guys that did the real thinking.
Yes, they did. It's really, the Federalist Papers as well. And, I shared this today. You heard this at the meet and greet that we had. I was a prosecutor to start with, and I've been a criminal defense attorney since. And so I was at the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association meeting. And one of the icons as a criminal defense lawyer that everyone highly respects, he was speaking. And this is what he said. He said, what do 50 old white men who half of them own slaves know about liberty and freedom? Out of one side of his mouth, he was saying that. Out of the other side of his mouth, you know what he's saying? He's wanting the Fourth Amendment to be applied to help his client in the area of, of unreasonable search and seizures. I'm thinking, okay, you've got a double standard here. You're asking that here are these men, they wrote outside of the Bible, in my opinion, the best written, one of the greatest documents, second greatest document in world history, okay? And you're arrogant, you're calling them out because, supposedly they were white. He needs to go back and study his history because they were not all old, maybe all white, but not all old, okay? So, and then, it's just so arrogant. And at the same time, these men gave you the Fourth Amendment and the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizures, which you're wanting to invoke that law, but they don't know anything about liberty and freedom. Okay, that's what's happening in America. That's what's happening in your law schools. That's what's happening at our continuing legal education programs. We're listening to this. And so I'm thinking, he is so far off. I mean, I respect his success, but I do not respect his damning our forefathers who have given us, as criminal defense lawyers, the greatest document in the world to protect our clients against unreasonable search and seizures, against the right. They gave us the right to remain silent, my clients. They gave my client the right to be free from self-incrimination. These founders gave us the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses, a right to jury trial. All of these things that were given to us, you're damning. And it's just wrong. And we have to get engaged in the process, and we have to push back, and we have to stand for what's right constitutionally. And not all of us who are running, who are involved in the judicial process, we need to do more than write a case. We should be speaking and talking about these issues because it's very important that we honor our founding fathers. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to pay honor to the people who gave us the greatest nation in the history of the world and one of the, next to the Bible, the greatest document. And to honor that and to give respect to that. And so, but if we're not out there, if we're not talking about these issues, I believe every elected official is not only an elected official, but you are a servant leader to the people in your community, to the people in your state, and we should be engaged in the process in terms of educating, showing up in Amarillo, Texas, traveling throughout the state, being a voice and making a difference so that we can take back our nation.
Well, maybe what we need to do is have a legislature introduce a bill and rename legal continuing ed courses to mandatory misinformation courses.
Well, that was a misinformation.
But maybe that would get the attention.
Well, thankfully most of the course was not that way, and all the speakers were not of his liking, but there's still a lot of it. And when you have very influential people making comments like that, a room full of several hundred lawyers, it's really not, it's sad. It's a sad day for our legal system.
Well, and what is even sadder is you picked up on it, you caught it right away. Mm-hmm. But how many people are taking those courses that it didn't click with?
That's right.
Once you see it, then you start seeing it everywhere.
It's true.
Like now that I see what's going on, and I can look at the headlines, and I can see exactly what they're trying to do, probably know who wrote it, and where it came from, and how they're manipulating people's minds. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's pervasive. I mean, really.
But you really just have to think about it, and once it clicks, it's like you get it,
But we have a voice, and I can have strong opinions as a judicial candidate or even on the bench about my perspective on the Constitution without making, commentary on how I would rule on a case. And so, but what they've done is they have beaten judges over the head, and they've beaten us into silence with the concept of you cannot comment on a case. Well, my perspective on the First Amendment or the Constitution or the validity of the Bill of Rights and, our founding fathers is that's where my starting point is, but it doesn't tell you how I'm going to rule on the specific facts of a case. So it tells you where I am in terms of my understanding of the law. So and a lot of judges like to hide behind that. Well, I can't make any comments on whether I'm pro-life, and I can't make any comments on my views about this or my views about that. And to a certain extent, I understand that, and I think we're not running for legislative office. That's true. And so there's a certain decorum and a judicial temperament that you want there, but at the same time, we are, officers of the court, and, we are attorneys, and we're participating in this legal system and the judicial system, so our opinions on the Constitution, whether it's an evolving document or how we're going to interpret the Constitution, as a judge, those are important. And
that's what it's all about. People need to choose. Do you want a judge who looks at the Constitution as a living document, or do you want a judge that believes it was written in on a piece of paper, and it's not a living document, and it means what it says?
Right.
It's like a contract.
That's true.
You can't change a contract.
That's right.
Not with everybody else. Everybody involves consent. So to me, when they signed that, it's a contract between the people and our elected officials.
Absolutely. It's a really good way to put it.
So therefore you have to keep it.
Yes.
There's no option.
That's
That's the way I
exactly
look
right.
at
I
it.
totally agree. So, and that's the position we need to take.
But the manipulator's tactic is to sow doubt and say you can't talk about it,
Right.
so they can change it.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're talking about it
It's
over
no
here.
different than a
So,
con man contractor doing that to people that they do work for.
that's true. You're exactly right, Dan. That's a great observation because they're saying, "No, you be quiet, Gina. Okay, we're not. You can't be out there speaking or talking or doing these things. Go sit in your corner." But it's okay for these other guys to lecture on the evolving document, this Constitution that's this living document, and to present at courses or in colleges. And so the left is over here indoctrinating, and they're telling all of us who are conservatives who have a different view of the Constitution, you got to be quiet. That's how they operate.
So in fact, it should be the opposite. The ones that are saying it's a living document ought to be shut down. That ought to be illegal because it's a lie.
Right. It is a lie, and so they're very effective, and that is become a big
But
part.
that's why we need Christians to vote
Yes.
who believe in our way of life, and they need to wake up or their church will no longer exist. And they've convinced them, oh, we can't say anything political because we might lose our 501c3 or 4 or whatever status it is,
Right.
their nonprofit status. And I think they've intimidated these people into believing something that's not true.
They have.
And they haven't done their own research.
That's right.
They need to be involved. It's their responsibility to be involved.
Thankfully, we're seeing a shift, and so I am really grateful for that. I've been involved through the years supporting Bunny Pounds with Christians Engaged, and it's a wonderful organization. It's not partisan, but their whole goal is to get people to pray for our country, to vote, and then to go engage in the political process. And that's what we need to see happen. And, I met a pastor yesterday in Lubbock at our event there, and I was really pleased. He showed up and he was participating and very engaged. And so I think he was surprised because I said, well, I'd be happy to come speak at your church, because there's been this divide between, someone who, is political and, the church itself. And, that's not in the Constitution at all. I said, look, I don't have to come and promote a particular party. I don't even have to promote my candidacy. But I'm willing to come and talk about truth, justice, righteousness, and these things, and to encourage your people to pray for our nation and to get involved in the process. So, we can engage at so many levels in having these organizations that are encouraging the church to get involved and encouraging Christian people to get involved. I think it's making a difference. And honestly, during the primary, I benefited from the fruit of a lot of conservative organizations, a lot of Christians in these groups that were out, and they were spending their own money to print and hand out push cards in their precincts. It was really an amazing movement. People say, "Oh, it's Trump. If Trump wasn't there, the movement would die." Little do they know. I don't believe that, Dan. I think Trump is a phenomenal leader and he's done a lot of good, and motivated our party. But I'm telling you, people are tired of what's happening under the Biden administration. People are tired. All these people who've sat quiet for so long, and so many people, Christians, even non-Christians, people, just the average person, the average Joe, they're tired of it. They're fed up with it. And so they're engaging in the political process. How do you have inflation at almost 20%? You better stand up. You better speak up. So, it's really sad. You've got people that have retired going back to work because they can't afford their medication. These are real problems that people have, not being able to put food on your table. I have a manufacturing company, and I have raised my manager staff so many times already in the last year, a number of times. I cannot keep up with the rate of inflation. To keep them where they need to be, it's just really a challenge for me as a small business owner. and people can't afford food on their table. So we have to get involved in this process, and we have to have a voice. We have to speak out. And so, family is the very core. And if you can't feed your family, you can't take care of your family, you can't afford to buy a home, we're moving in the wrong direction. We're going to look like some of these other European countries or even third world nations if we continue down this path. It's really, it's tragic.
Oh, and you go to certain parts of the country, it's like a third world country already.
It is.
I mean, go to California. I was out there a year ago, and they said, "Oh, whatever you do, don't lock the car, your rent car." Like what? Oh, and don't buy gas in Oakland. Don't even stop and buy fuel. Like why? Oh, they'll rob you. I'm like, I'm not too worried about somebody robbing me, but I thought it was so. What kind of a life is that? That you can't park a car at your hotel at night and lock it because they will break out the windows and break into it. That's California. I was just shocked that that's how. And then it just looks like a war zone out there.
It's sad.
And in Baltimore, it's the same way.
Well, Austin, Texas downtown is.
Yeah. I used to have an office at 6th and Congress. And I guess it was a little over a year and a half ago down there. And it was just, downtown was filthy.
It is.
Nothing like it used to be.
Not at all. It's shocking.
Yeah. So as inflation goes up and people start to struggle, then you get more and more people on the streets, and everything comes crashing down.
It's true, Dan.
But it's easy to fix.
It is. If we, vote.
You got to vote.
Yes.
If you, and I've told elected officials in high places, but they don't listen. All you got to do, show Detroit, show San Francisco, show photos of these shining cities, beautiful cities in the 50s under Republican rule, and show them today under Democrat rule. Totally different. That's all you got to do. That's all the voters need to know.
And I think what we're seeing.
Conservative policies work. Conservatism works. Right and wrong works. Liberalism is Marxism, and it always fails because the problem, I believe, with Marxism is it had one fatal flaw. Sounds really good, but it missed one thing. Human nature.
Right.
They didn't understand, Marx did not understand human nature. And that's a problem with liberals. They believe that everybody thinks the way they do. Mm-hmm. And they're wrong.
That's true.
That's basically the problem with it and why it won't work.
Well, you see this, what you're saying on a even, like you're talking about that contrast between the cities. I think one of the best things that Governor Abbott did was to bus all these illegal immigrants throughout the United States because, we're dealing with it here in Texas and have been for a long time, and we have the consequences of it. So now every state is now a border state. And not just because of what Abbott's done, but just because of the mass number of people that have immigrated. And so it's, or I should say have entered illegally. And you're seeing these deaths happening in these cities and the crime rate going up and all the problems across the United States. So people are seeing, hey, this is not working. I want my daughters to be safe and be able to walk the streets safely. I mean, it's sad what happened in Houston, Texas, and in these other cities. And the policies are not working like you said. And so it's this contrast between, hey, look, we had basic security and safety. We could go to a park and be safe. We could stop and gas our car up and be safe. I don't gas my car up after dark. I would have never thought about that 5 or 10 years ago. So, and I live in Waco, Texas. You know, I'm older and I'm female, and, you know, I just am cautious. And so, you know, because of what we see happening. So that's God calling, talk to say hello to us.
All right, I think I guess that tells us what we need to be doing. All right. Well, I know you've got to get on down the road and get back to Waco. So we will kind of wrap it up. And if is there anything else you want to tell the voters while you got them on the line?
Sure. I would appreciate your vote, obviously, as we've been talking about. Get your friends out to vote, but also we need financial support. So if you want to support my campaign financially, you can go to GinaParkerCampaign.com. That's Gina Parker Campaign.com. And you can donate online, and there's also an address there if you prefer to send a check. They can send a check as well because it takes money to run these campaigns. And so we need three things: we need your prayer, your vote, and your financial support. And I'm asking for you to support me today.
And probably the most important thing that they can donate to you, more important than money, is their time.
Yes, it's very helpful.
So if they could help you make phone calls and talk to other people for you, that's even more valuable than money.
It really is. It makes a big difference when you have a precinct chairman block walking their entire precinct. That's worth, you know, more than most donations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, Gina. Well, we appreciate you coming today,
Sure.
and good luck on the campaign trail, and let us know if we can ever help you.
All right, thank you.